Hi and welcome to GM Runs Game. In this video we're going to be looking at Hope's Last Day, which is a cinematic scenario included in the core rulebook for the Alien role-playing game by Free League Publishing. This scenario is a great little 2-hour intro scenario for showing players who've got no experience or very little experience with this game, all the different mechanics, as well as giving them some of those expectations, meeting some of those expectations with facehuggers, with xenomorphs that everybody wants to see when they play the Aliens game. There are, of course, lots of different ways that you can introduce those across longer game types, or in the cinematic scenarios that are sold separately. Those are less prevalent. They're more sort of Prometheus based. But in this one, it's sort of a palate cleanser, and it sets everybody up knowing what to expect from the mechanics of the game, as well as knowing what to expect into how dangerous all of these aliens can be. I like to suggest that you run this as part of your session 0. So there are pre-gen characters, dish them out as people feel like to people whoever they want to be, and then just get going with it. Generally speaking, this runs for about 2.5 hours, and that'll leave you with, in most cases, a little bit of time at the end to, if you're creating characters for a custom campaign, or just to review and discuss what you might have done differently and things you need to be aware of when you're going into some of the other cinematic scenarios. I don't want to go too heavily into what you actually get in this core rulebook or as part of the scenario. I'll do a quick rundown of the story, and then we'll look at some of the examples of how things are presented and some suggestions on how to run it for your characters, for your player characters. Okay, so this is the abridged version of what the scenario says. Someone's come back to Hadley's Hope. They're a wildcatter, they're a frontier person, they've come back in, and there's a parasite. It's a facehugger. It creates a chest burster, and the chest burster disappears. Security can't find it. There are more people affected by these parasites, and there are more people, we think, dying, rumours of people dying, around about the time we pick up this scenario. Your group of players have been asked to go and do a routine maintenance run on a processor. So they get in a tractor, they head over there, but it breaks down, and they're forced, after trying to communicate with Hadley's Hope, to start walking back to the settlement and see what's gone on. Something clearly has gone wrong at Hadley's Hope, and they need to find out what it is and decide what they want to do. When they get back, quite quickly, they'll probably decide that they need to get the hell off of LV-426. LV-426, as featured in the second Alien movies, so this isn't a prequel to that second Aliens movie. They'll learn a ship has landed just before they left, and that on that ship it carried Miranda Reynolds, and it carried someone called Kaminsky. Miranda Reynolds is a company agent, and Kaminsky is a medical officer, a medic. They need to get in touch with these people so that they can get on this ship and they can get off this planet. They'll move to a few locations fairly early in this session. Within almost 20 to 30 minutes, they'll have found Miranda Reynolds and they'll have found her dead, which also gives you a chance to introduce your first xenomorph. How you do this is quite important for landing these creatures the first time. So this is one section of the book that I would really look at and really read. It's not a lot, but you can look at it and you can change it if you want to, and you can add a bit of your flair as to how you want to deliver that so that it has the maximum effect. And they'll also start at this point gaining a little bit of stress, to the point that they will start to encounter what the stress mechanic and the panic mechanic is in this role-playing game. They'll learn in the room that houses Reynolds' dead body, there's a two-way communicator between Reynolds and Kaminsky, and they'll learn that Kaminsky is in the medical wing of Hadley's Hope, and she's going to ask them to go to the medical wing. Reynolds' transponder, the keys to the vehicle have been damaged as part of that xenomorph attack, and they need to then go to the only other viable option, which is going to take them through the middle of the settlement and then to the lower south section of the settlement to try and get Kaminsky's, which presents its own problems. Kaminsky is carrying something in her chest that she doesn't want to tell people about, There are a few dead bodies they're going to encounter on the way. There are some specimens of parasites, and this is where you can really start role-playing the social mechanics out, because all of your player characters are going to have different agendas, which we'll cover off in a little bit. And those agendas are basically the motivations. So some people are going to be pacifists and they want to try and save everybody there. Some people probably are going to want to take specimens of these aliens and get off of there. Some people just want to see the world burn, and that will play out. And it can play out in front of this person, and you can really ratchet up the stress and the tension in that situation, as well as potentially, if they make too much noise, have some other things appear that force them to act a little bit quicker. It's a point in this scenario that can really bog them down a little bit in time, but as long as you're sure that everything that's happening here is important and developing the story, let it play for a good amount of time, and then once you think that they've basically got to a conclusion but they haven't decided that that's the conclusion, okay, let's get them to make a decision. So once they've got the keys from Comiskey, they've got a few options. They can explore more of Hadley's Hope, or they can move straight to the transport ship. If you're moving straight to the transport ship, I like to use some of the other xenomorphs that are suggested in this scenario to pressure that movement, so you can see them outside of the settlement, and you can see them moving towards the landing pad. When your players get to the landing pad and they use the transponder to open it up, right at the very end, as the gates come down, you can see in the middle, on platforms in this lander, there are eggs. And as that lander, as the back hatch of that lander is coming down, some of those eggs start to twitch at the top and unfold. And here you can create quite a nice bit of conflict between the players and some facehuggers. And then you can also add those xenomorphs that have been following the players. You can add them in, and you can really make them feel like this is a time-sensitive situation, and they need to act quickly. They can either get in and they can fly away, or they don't survive. And once you've resolved either of those two outcomes, you can talk about what would have happened then following the story of Hope's Last Day and moving into the second Aliens movie, and would there have been any difference? Have people gone and whistle-blown? Were there no people to whistle-blow? So that's the story, basically, in a snapshot of Hope's Last Day. So let's have a look at how some of the stuff here is presented for the players. So in the book on the left-hand side, on all of this page, we've got examples of what is presented in the book. On the left-hand side is a character bio. This is Janice McQueer. Her career in the role-playing game is an officer, which gives her abilities. But as a role player, she's a union organizer. So she it says as her blurb here, you're a colonel administrator, union organizer here on LV426, and you take responsibilities very seriously. Naturally, you expect your workers to do the same. It's hard enough with the way the new tiny bastards breathing down your neck, but if you don't get help from the workers, what hope is there? At least some, like Singleton, are supportive, although you'd sack Hirsch and Holroyd if you could. And those names are names of other player characters, creating a dynamic environment and dynamic relationships for your people to play around in. Below that, it's got a stats block, and it's got her personal agenda. You don't show it, but you love the people who've had this hope. Now your friends are dying, and you must take revenge on the corporates for causing this chaos, causing this crisis. Agent Reynolds and her science lackey Comiskey must pay for their crimes. So you're stern maybe, and abrasive at times, but you do it because you love the people here, and you want to look after them, and you want to do right by them. And Reynolds and Comiskey, some players might want to save, some players might have other motivations. You totally emotionally disassociate from these people, and you're annoyed that they've come in to try and do something, take some aliens, and your people are the cannon fodder. Your people are the collateral damage for Weyland-Yutani. and that's this character's motivations. To the right of that bio block, we've got some examples of locations and how they're described in the book. That can be a little bit tricky. You need to know when to stop just reading it verbatim, because it will also give you some information you don't necessarily want to tell the players. So let's have a look at the first one here. So block A, A1, offices. Usually a busy part of the colony with communal office space. No one cleans up after themselves, so the place is littered with coffee cups and the bins are full. A drone xenomorph, which is passive, is lurking near the north lock. So that last sentence, you don't want to be reading out. Maybe you highlight that. Maybe you do a little circle around it. However you want to differentiate. Some of these locations have got multiple outcomes, so it's not as simple as avoid the last sentence. There can be multiple different last sentences depending on player choices or what they interact with. I like to highlight things on here, just makes it nice and clear what I'm reading and what I'm not reading. It also really is giving you a framework. So this office it's usually a busy part of the colony. It's quiet now. Nobody's there. It's a communal office space, so there should be movement from lots of different departments, from lots of different sections of this colony. Nobody here cleans up after themselves because it's communal, so nobody individually is responsible. So the place is littered. It's littered with coffee cups. Are any of those coffee cups full? Are they warm, hot? How did people leave? Did they leave in a rush? And the bins are full. Maybe there's ashtrays, maybe there's a cigarette still smoking, or a cigarette that's been rested on the side of the ashtray and not stopped out in the middle. You can give little clues as to how things have gone. So think about what this place was like before these players walked in and customize it slightly, even if you want to do it as you go on the cuff. Are the coffee cups hot? Yes. So maybe there's still people alive. That's going to motivate them to move forward. Are there cigarettes smoking? No, because that might have burnt out in a couple of minutes, and the coffee cup will stay warm for 45 minutes or so. So, people are up to 45 minutes away and not within 5 or 10 minutes, we think. You've got another example mechanically with the housing and A2. So these are large family apartments. It's noisy with air conditioning and heating ducts for the base meeting above them. The heating system is leaking scalding water. It's a hellish sauna with soaked carpets. So it's dripping, or pouring. How is that water coming out of there? Is it just leaking? Can we use a little bit better language there? The PCs splash as they move. So the water is, there's a few inches of water, we think. Because they're splashing, they're not going to be as mobile, or they're not going to be able to be as quiet. And that last sentence in this example again is something that we either would or wouldn't highlight to keep separate from the description of the room. As we spoke about Officer Janice McQueer's personal agenda, we'll talk about resolving personal agendas. So towards the end of the book, there's this section here telling you how you evaluate personal agendas and who's been successful and who hasn't. Basically, you can award story points for people who are role-playing or who are resolving personal agendas and really committing to it. And with the Alien cinematic scenarios, committing to personal agendas is a real driving force for pushing the story forward, and it sort of snowballs as each person chips in and creates this story, creates their story, even within the larger story that's been set up. So you can give out story points which work like an automatic success in a dice roll, and they can carry over to different scenarios. So once you finish this scenario, if you're going on to the starter set, they can carry those over onto the starter set if you want. I wouldn't give out too many of them, just because you don't want to remove the success scarcity or the tension from the start of the set of the next one, but the next story, or if you're going into your own campaign. But you can reward people like, that was really good, you get to keep that for the next session, and then your other player characters are going to look, maybe the ones who haven't got story points, they're going to look and they are going to really be motivated to throw themselves into it a bit more. It's a nice mechanic for bringing people who aren't super keen on the role-playing part of things and sort of really pulling them out of their shell a bit and going, hey, listen, let's have some fun. Below that section is the event section. So these are optional things that you can do. They don't all need to happen, and they don't need to happen in any option in any order. One of these, which I've not got listed in here, is that the players should never feel that they've got loads and loads of time to do whatever they want. If they're slowing down, that's my dog. If they're slowing down, then we need to introduce threat. So whether that's motion tracker noise, or whether that's aliens approaching, or little scuffling of facehuggers, or a vent pipe dropping down, something, a dent from above them to say that something's on the roof on the outside. Introduce that fear and push them forward to drive the story forward. The next thing we've got here is the map, which is very nice looking. It can be quite difficult to describe. There's a couple of issues with it around the ladders. There's also printable versions where it's a white background available on the Free League website. These I like to print out and give to all the players because the actual map itself is relatively small. They're able to have it up close and personal and decide where they want to go. The landing pad is underneath Hadley's Hope here. So in this little box you can see that this is the landing pad here. And the air traffic controller is there. So we're going to start in the West Lock, which is here, or start approaching the West Lock. We're going to move to C1. This is for like the core stuff. Move up to C2. Across the B2. C2 is where you'll find Reynolds. Move to B2 where there's an opportunity to get some weapons, which are very scarce when you're starting. Move down to E2 where you're going to find Comitski, and this section will take a reasonable amount of time. You've got a couple of options for getting out. I've had people cut holes in E2 walls to climb down, which is fun. You can interact with Tannis Casino, which is fun. There's an optional section which is in Billy's Bar. There's another survivor there you can interact with. And there's this lower section which is sort of the habitation area, which if you're in section E2 and you're looking at the CCTV cameras, you can get a really horrific view of what's happened by going slowly one by one through the cameras and describing what you're seeing. And that can affect one person with one person looking, or it can affect everybody if everybody's looking. Just be careful how you're asking. Okay, you're going to have to look at the cameras. What's everybody else doing? Are you all looking, or are you doing other stuff? Don't sit there and go, okay, who's all looking at the cameras? Because people go, not me. And that can sort of take away from the stress mechanic bit there. Once they've done those things, they're going to move to this landing pad. And I like I said, to have these xenomorphs that are around the building, maybe start coming along the north wall gates here, or start dropping down and moving in this direction, just to sort of shoehorn them towards that landing zone and to make this scenario end relatively quickly. Because as much as it's a great introduction scenario, there's not a huge amount going on. And if you were to try and stretch it out over more than 2 or 2.5 hours, depending on the size of your group, it can start to feel a little bit hollow, or there's a little bit of echoing in terms of what we're trying to do here. So don't be afraid. Push them forward, keep the tempo high, keep the adrenaline going, and make them make difficult decisions that could see their character die. That's fine. This is Aliens. We all expect people to die in Aliens. My advice on this one is, if you really are interested in this role-playing game, get this core book and get the starter set. The starter set's got a bigger story that you can run. The core rulebook's got this small one, which I would advise you run first. In terms of pacing, within the first sort of 30 minutes, I want my players to be with Reynolds. There's a xenomorph then that they can interact with, or a facehugger that they can interact with. So have that combat and have that resolved within the first 45 minutes. Then you're going to have a bit of travelling time to the medical area, and you're going to have another 30 minutes, another 45 minutes to do the big talking part, which is an E2 when you're talking to Comitski and there's internal conflict and there might be some aliens arriving if things are too late. And then you have the last 30 to 45 minutes for players to be able to get out of Hadley's Hope, to move to the landing pad, and to end up dealing with what's on the spaceship. Travelling generally will only take you 5 or 10 minutes between locations. It doesn't take long at all unless players deviate. But you've got to think about locations like C1, locations like B2 on these maps that characters can investigate and you can give information. And those are sort of 5 or 10 minute slow down areas. as well as Tanner's Casino or Billy's Bar if they want to interact and try and save somebody there, or you can show that the aliens are still here and you can kill that person off while they're trying to interact with it. All in all, Hadley's Hope is a great scenario. I think it's a great scenario for showing off lots of what the system can do without necessarily bogging you down too much in the story, which seems like a weird thing to say, but we're not here for the story. We're here to dip our foot into aliens. We're here to experience the stress, the anxiety, the adrenaline of fighting these things and finding out what's gone on in a short space of time, so that by the time they step off of it, it's like stepping off the waltzers when you're at a fun fair. Your legs are on the ground, but your head and your body is still moving a bit, going, what actually happened there? That was great fun. Let's do the next one. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like it, please share it so more people can enjoy the Aliens role-playing game. I'm going to be doing some more Aliens videos, as well as some videos on some other role-playing games that will be coming up in the following days and weeks. Yeah, I hope you had a great time. I'll see you next time. Bye.